Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Wildfires continue to rage in Southern California. 10 people have been killed, neighborhoods flattened, and more than 150,000 forced to evacuate. Now, BC has had our share of wildfires, namely in West Kelowna in 2023. We're going to be joined by West Kelowna's fire chief. And so from prevention, mitigation, and evacuation, what are the lessons to be learned for BC and for LA? At 12:30, the buzz around women's pro hockey. A sold-out PWH game in Vancouver. What's needed to make an expansion happen in Vancouver? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. The Palisades and Eaton fires burning in Los Angeles are now described as the most destructive in the city's history. 5 major fires are burning across the city, with spot fires reported across Southern California. Los Angeles County is instituting nighttime curfews in neighborhoods ravaged by fire. Officials gave an update at a press conference this morning. Have a listen to LA County Sheriff Robert Luna.
A curfew order has been established for the Palisades and Eaton fire areas in all mandatory evacuation zones. That will be in effect. It was in effect last night, and it's going to be in effect tonight at 6 p.m. So it ended at 6 a.m. this morning, will take effect again until 6 p.m. I'm emphasizing that to our media partners because part of this is communicating to the public. You cannot be in these affected areas. If you are subject to arrest. That is important. We're not doing this to inconvenience anybody. We're doing it to protect the structures, the houses that people have left because we ordered them to leave, and I want them to feel confident that we are doing everything we can to secure that. This curfew will be strictly enforced and is being taken to enhance public safety, protect property, and prevent any burglaries or looting in the area that the residents have evacuated.
That is LA County Sheriff Robert Luna speaking this morning at a press conference. Now, as I mentioned, the fires have already killed 10 people and destroyed more than 10,000 structures since Tuesday. It's forced more than 150,000 people from their homes. Now, we know BC is no stranger to devastating wildfires. In 2021, as you know, 2 people were killed and the village of Lytton destroyed. And 2 fires in the central Okanagan, 20 years apart, forced the evacuation of more than 65,000 people in Kelowna and West Kelowna. So we're asking, what kind of lessons can BC learn from the Southern California wildfire situation? And what lessons could LA officials learn from our experience here? And what is the help that BC can give right now? We just heard that they are seeking help from the province, and officials here and firefighters will be lending some help. We just heard that in the new news. So you can give us a call and let us know what you think are the lessons that can be learned across jurisdictions. 1-800 825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. I'm very glad to welcome to the show Jason Brolin, the fire chief in West Kelowna. Now, he led the firefighting effort when the McDougall Creek wildfire burned in the central Okanagan in 2023. Chief Brolin, thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gloria.
It's Michelle here, and
sorry.
No, that's okay. I know you're speaking to a lot of media these days. You spoke with my colleague Sarah Penton just the other day in Kelowna. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for you to be speaking about these so frequently right now, as you're also watching the images coming from Los Angeles, given the McDougall wildfire was just 18 months ago.
Michelle, seeing the clips coming out of California, it's haunting. It's disturbing, and it's very difficult to watch. I'm hearing from my firefighters that some of them just have to turn it off. Because the things that we're seeing and the way that they're being shown takes you right back to those moments that we experienced. I heard a very experienced reporter who was right in the middle of things describe what was happening to him. And it was the exact same thing that happened to me. and to our firefighters, and those moments take you right back. But that said, I will never pass up an opportunity to look at lessons learned and best practices, but also just to share with the public like some very simple things that they can be doing now, particularly if your area is prone to fire, in order to improve your home's chance of surviving a wildfire.
That's a very important part of the discussion. I want to acknowledge that the trauma and the emotions that you're going through, I'm sure, are also being felt by the thousands of people who were evacuated, who might be watching these images, who live in West Kelowna and the Kelowna region. We've talked, you and I have talked before about the psychological effects of having to be on the front lines. I was watching some of the footage this morning from CNN and watching the firefighters, trudge their way through the burnt out landscape. Can you just talk to me a little bit more about taking care of the psychological part of people's experiences right now for folks who are dealing with this, who have been evacuated, people here in BC who are watching it and having those memories, as you say, haunting them right now?
Michelle, I think it was almost exactly a year ago that you and I spoke about the mental health impacts of wildfires.
Yeah.
And what I can say is that, fighting a fire like that in a lot of ways is like going to war, and you have a plan A, you have a plan B, you have a plan C, and there are 1,000 decisions in front of you, whether you're a firefighter on the ground or you're an incident commander responsible for the operation. And oftentimes just making those decisions one by one, following your plan, you don't have a lot of time to think about these things. It's afterwards that things become more and more difficult. And that's certainly what we found. And I'm sure that that's what the members of our community are feeling as well. During the fire, of course, you are concerned. Firefighters, they worry about their own safety. They worry about, what's happening with their family, and, where, because they likely live in the areas that are affected, and their families are being forced to evacuate.
Mm-hmm.
But, they also worry about their coworkers and their fellow firefighters. Firefighting is a team sport. And our men and women are a very tight knit group, and worrying about where's my friend. I just played ball with him the other night, and now he's out in the fire line, and are they safe as well? So there's a lot going through these firefighters' minds, but they are real experts. They're in California. They've developed that expertise over many years, like we're doing now. And it's a pretty incredible thing. As difficult as it is for me to watch, it's incredible to see the strategies and tactics and the technology that is being put to work there. And it's something that I hope we see in the coming years in our area.
Okay, now you just touched there on something that you're looking at that we may be able to apply. As we just reported, the province says it has been contacted by officials in California to help. And the forest minister says that resources will be deployed as needed, and they're requesting senior level of expertise. What kind of help might we be able to provide right now?
We have a very robust system in our province for deploying to help our neighbors, as we saw in West Kelowna during our fire. In a very short period of time, we had 50 fire engines from 30 plus different fire departments coming to our aid, because we have a common system and a common way of operating strategies and tactics and communicating. So that's a very strong system in our province, and it will be a very interesting test of that system as we look to potentially deploy internationally and support our neighbors across the border. So that is something we can bring to bear, the experience of our firefighters. I would put the men and women of my fire department up against anyone. And as things unfold here, we are in the very early stages of discussing what that looks like.
Okay. Joining me is Jason Brolland, the fire chief in West Kelowna, led the firefighting effort during the McDougall Creek fire. Of course, that was really the top news in British Columbia back in the summer of 2023 in August, when thousands of people were evacuated from the central Okanagan due to the large McDougall Creek wildfire that went from West Kelowna, jumped the lake to Kelowna, and then Lake Country. So we want to hear from you based on our experience here in BC. What do you think LA might be able to learn, and what can we learn from what is going on in Los Angeles right now that is being ravaged by 5 wildfires? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And Rhonda is joining us from on the island at Parksville. Hi, Rhonda.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, so my worry here, I don't have anything to advise California, but my worry here on Vancouver Island, especially here at the east side, in our spring and summer with the drought and everything, the Scotch broom and gorse, which is an invasive species, and all along the roadways, is very, very flammable. And the thing is, when I'm going to Victoria, I see how close those condos are, because it's all along the roadways, like where it used to be native green vegetation that this Scotch broom gets in, and
it's flammable.
It's very flammable, and it's right next to the road. So there's the roadway, and then there's the broom, and then there's the condos.
Right. Rhonda, thank you very much. Yeah. Chief Brolin, what can you tell us about that? You've talked a bit about, fire smart practices, clearing brush from around your home. But what are the risks? What are the common risks that you are seeing between LA and perhaps Parksville in BC, the surrounding topography and what can act as flammable material that would actually spread embers and fires?
It's very simple. We have a lot of work to do. We need to learn to live with wildfire. And as devastating as what happened in Los Angeles is, we need to find a way to be better prepared for that. We're not going to be perfect, but we need to take steps in that direction. We follow California very closely. For us in the fire service, we often describe them as a bit of a bellwether for us. Things that they experienced 5 to 10 years ago are things that we're now seeing. And it's an unpleasant thought that the fire behavior that they're experiencing now, which is outside of the traditional fire season,
right,
could be the fire behavior that we see 10 years from now. And I don't say that to alarm people, but I say that we have work to do. And how do we do that? We do that by planning and then executing on that plan. And the Fire Smart principles are a key part of that, whether it's local governments or the province preparing on a very large scale, or whether it's residents like the lady who had just phoned in, looking around their home and saying, what can we do? The science following our fire, scientists came, they investigated the fires and made recommendations to us, and we found it was wind and it was embers, the same thing that they're experiencing there in Los Angeles now.
Very much so. But what makes you say that this could be something we experience 10 years from now? This is, the scale of it is so much larger than what we've seen in BC so far.
Absolutely. And a city that size with the population density is not something that we see here. But, what I would expect that we may see are large wind-driven fires that broadcast embers over a very wide area and cause the same type of destruction that we're seeing. Sometimes it's senseless. You look at it and wonder, why did this home survive and the one next door didn't? Or why are the trees still green in the yard, but the home is gone? And, Fire Smart principles and the scientific work behind them has shown us why. And it's because the wind drives embers like a snowstorm. And anywhere around your house that in the winter you have snow collect, those corners or between boards on your deck, or, build up in places on your roof and your eaves, are places that in the summer during a wildfire, embers collect. So we need to look at those and say, what can we do in order to give our homes a better chance. What type of landscaping do we have in that immediate zone around the home, the first 1.5 meters? Like, do you have trees touching your house, for example? And working with your neighbors to make that happen. But also local governments. I brought our community wildfire resiliency plan to Mayor and Council in December, and we identified over 60 different areas in our community that need to have wildfire or should or could have wildfire mitigation treatment take place. It's a massive challenge, and it's on a scale that right now the funding that we receive to do this work is just not enough. We need to redouble and exponentially increase our efforts, particularly in areas like mine that are prone to wildfire.
Okay, and so who are you lobbying for that funding then to enable that mitigation?
Well, we are very grateful to the province of British Columbia. They provide $200,000 per year to our municipality in order to undertake this work. But if we were to continue funding at that level, it would take us decades in order to do the work that needs to be done. So, we continue to look to the province and work with them to improve funding, which they have over the past couple of years. But we need to continue to do more, and we need to look at doing it on a scale that is bigger than 5 to 10 hectares at a time. We need to do hundreds of hectares at a time, and likely the economical way to do that is to do it through prescribed and cultural burning at this time of year. And that will take some work for all of us to get our heads around putting fire on the ground at a large scale in order to stop fire at another time of year.
Let's take some calls before we go to talking more about fire smart efforts with Chief Brolin here, but asking you, what are the lessons that can be learned here in BC from what we're seeing, the devastation we're seeing in Los Angeles right now due to these wildfires, and what could be the help that BC provides? We know that the province has been contacted by officials in California seeking help. What could be the lessons learned for LA from our experience here? 1-800-825-5950. Bev is calling us from Vancouver. Hi, Bev.
Hello.
Hi, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I reflect back on Malibu that has rebuilt itself after continuing to build houses again after their cliffs have fallen down. That's one example. Zoning issues are huge. In California, they build ginormous houses up in the forested mountains, and they expect people to come and save them. Zoning regulations absolutely need to be changed down there. Los Angeles is one big parking lot, lots of single occupancy vehicles driving everywhere, no transit, no sidewalks. They might rethink that. And trust me, Vancouver is no better off. We have way too many cars, single occupancy vehicles sitting with their engines running, completely ignoring what's going on with respect to climate change. And we can talk all we want about getting the brush away from the corners of your houses and hosing your house down and building this and building that and not building other things. That's complete nonsense. That is like moving the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Well, it's dealing with the immediate, isn't it?
Yes, which is not the issue. The issue is, what are we going to do tomorrow? Not tomorrow, today. What kind of changes are we going to make in our lives, which we should have started making 40 years ago? We are literally 40 years behind the 8 ball. So that's what I have to say to LA. That's what I have to say to Vancouver. And this council has simply done nothing, zero, about
to address
climate change.
Bev, thank you very much for the call. That bigger picture of climate change and the role it plays in these wildfires and the severity. Mary on the line now in Kelowna. Hello, Mary. Thanks so much for calling.
Hello. Hello, thank you. And first of all, thank you to the chief and all of his crews that did such an exemplary job a few years ago and continue to. Amazing. I see that the City of Kelowna Parks Department forestry staff is hosting a meeting where they want to recommend that 80,000 trees be planted in the next 25 years in Kelowna. I'm just wondering, is that a wise thing to consider. When I see down in Los Angeles, a lot of those areas, there might not have been a lot of trees, but once it gets into the subdivision, the fire makes its own fuel, doesn't it? So anyway, I'm just curious what the fire chief thinks of this idea.
Yeah, interesting question, Mary. Thank you very much for the call from Kelowna. Chief Brolin?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can't speak specifically to what our friends and partners across the lake in the city of Kelowna are up to, but it does give me an opportunity to say that Fire Smart BC does a tremendous job of publicizing what's called the Fire Smart plant list. There are many different types of trees and plants that will grow in our various regions across the province. And FireSmart BC has actually published a list of those landscaping materials. And while no tree or plant is fireproof or is perfect, there are some that are much better than others. So for example, looking at a deciduous green tree that while it loses its leaves in the fall, it's much more it's much less prone to that explosive fire behavior than a cedar hedge is, for example. So encouraging people to look at the FireSmart plant list or to go to their nursery. And a lot of nurseries have actually worked with FireSmart in order to put tags on plants that identify that they're FireSmart.
Yeah.
So
it's the sign of the times.
I would hope, absolutely. I would hope that people considering planting trees, whether they be cities or individuals, are looking at making fire smart choices.
Chief Brolin, I have about 30 seconds. Should people be planning now for fire season?
Absolutely. If we have a quiet year in terms of our fire load, that's a great thing. But more than likely, in the coming years, we will face wildfire again, and learning how to live with it is important. We're working hard to capture best practices and improve as the fire service.
Okay.
And I just encourage people, take the action now, make a plan. They're very simple things that you can do.
So appreciate speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Brolin has been my guest, chief of the fire chief in West Kelowna. It's 12:28 now, and we heard this morning from a representative of long-standing businesses. Some of them have been, some of the thousands of structures lost to fires in LA, and so business leaders are now thinking of how they can support recovery efforts in the months to come. The executive director of the downtown Los Angeles Business Improvement District actually used to live in Vancouver. Nolan Marshall III is also the former president and CEO of the Downtown Vancouver BIA, and he spoke on the early edition this morning.
The nature of Los Angeles is that you have friends and family and colleagues that live all over the region. It's a heavy commuter region. Mm-hmm. And just the constant checking on colleagues, employees, friends, family, because we're all so spread out and we're all impacted by this. Here locally in downtown, we've opened our doors for residents who were displaced. The hotels have been very generous in opening their doors and providing rooms. But this will impact the region for quite some time. I'm trying to organize support for our local restaurants, many of which have had to close. This is a very precarious time for that industry, even still following the pandemic. And so some of the urgent impacts of this disaster are going to be felt for quite some time. And so we're just thinking through, how do we support people immediately in the region?
You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us, whether you're listening on Radio 1, watching us on CBC television, or live streaming on YouTube or our streaming service. It is very good to have you with us. Thanks so much for all your calls and your emails. We're going to get to more of them in our next half hour, and we'll talk about women's pro hockey. A lot of buzz and excitement around it this week in Vancouver. And so we're going to ask you, what are the chances of the PWHL expanding westward to this city, and what's needed to support it? We'll have that conversation with CBC's Karen Larson, and that's coming up after this CBC News Update with Michelle Morton.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. BC's Jobs Minister says the province closed off 2024 on a positive note with more than 14,000 new jobs in December. Diana Gibson says the increase comes despite slow economic growth and the threat of proposed U.S. tariffs. Gibson says BC's labour market outlook also shows almost 117,000 job openings in science, technology, engineering, and math occupations over the next decade. As construction of the Broadway subway line drags on, the Mount Pleasant Business Improvement Association says some shops are struggling to stay open and is calling for taxation relief from the BC government. The province first estimated the project would be completed this year. That's been pushed to 2027. A subway project spokesperson has said the province does not provide compensation for businesses or residents during construction. And experts say the hotter, drier conditions spurring fast-moving fires in California are also being recorded in BC, prompting as a good reminder for British Columbians to be prepared. FireSmart BC says most homes that are destroyed during a wildfire are ignited by embers or sparks, and by removing flammable materials from around your home can help prevent it from igniting. In the local forecast by Environment Canada, a mix of sun and clouds and gusty winds for today, highs reaching 8 degrees. For this evening, a few clouds and cooling down to 2. Tomorrow, a mix of sun and clouds, a high of 6, and a few clouds in the evening, and clouds in the evening with a low of 2. Now back to BC Today with Michelle Elliott.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle Morton.
Anytime, Michelle Elliott.
Good to have you. We love it when there's a Michelle team.
I know. We've said it before. We need our own team jackets or something.
That's right. We have a couple of reporters, yourself as well, and me. And Michelle Sue, who works as well here at CBC. The Michelle team is expanding. So
it's true. And it's always fun when we're sitting in a line together and we hear Michelle and then all heads turn. We're all synchronized.
Yeah, there's a girl group in the making, I think. We should get to practicing.
Maybe start a band. Yeah, exactly.
You never know. Michelle, thank you.
Anytime.
That is Michelle Morton joining us from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Thanks so much for being with us. And here's what's coming up on the Coast.
Hi there, Michelle. It's Gloria Makarenko here. I wanted to outline a few things we've got lined up for On the Coast this afternoon. We're going to have a conversation around pedestrian safety following an incident last week near Metrotown SkyTrain station. So Vancouver planner Sandy James is going to join us to talk about that. Darius Madavi, our science and climate specialist, is back with us. It's Friday, so he is going to be here with his first science quiz of the year. And our pop culture columnist, Rad Simon Pillay. He'll help get you ready for the weekend. So join us between 3 and 6 for On the Coast.
Gloria, thank you very much. And of course, continuing coverage of the wildfires in Southern California. David wrote us an email. Besides the practical implications that the chief of West Kelowna Fire is mentioning, such as FireSmart, the scale of drought and devastating wildfires point to the need to consider climate change too. We are seeing this effect in communities around the globe. We need more prescribed burns. Importantly, we need to contribute to reducing global warming. Thanks for the email. $12:34 now Pacific time. Well, hockey history was made in Vancouver this week. The Professional Women's Hockey League drew a sold-out crowd at Rogers Arena. More than 19,000 fans came to watch the Toronto Scepters battle the Montreal Victoire. Now, here are some of the fans who attended the PWHL's first game in Vancouver.
We don't really get to see a lot of professional women's athletes play here in Vancouver because we don't have a team here. We kind of usually see it on TV. So it's a pretty special experience to experience it in real life.
You get these questions like, hey, how come there's no girl hockey players? So it's nice for them to see girls on the big stage with a full packed arena.
It makes a difference. It shows that women can do just as much as men can do when it comes to sports and really anything.
Now, the game was part of the PWHL's Takeover Tour, which is traveling across North America to play in cities that do not have women's pro hockey teams yet. yet. That is the important word because people are seeing this as a sign of things to come and asking, has this week's game increased the chances of the PWHL coming permanently to Vancouver? So can Vancouver support a pro women's hockey team, and what's needed to make it happen and to support it successfully? Call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone or email us at bctoday@cbc.ca. If you were at the game, we'd love to hear from you. It seemed like there was a lot of energy, just like this incredible energy that was at the game. Loud crowds and chanting. So we want to hear all about that too. So you can give us a call. Well, joining me now is CBC reporter Karen Larson. She is an award-winning sports broadcaster, of course. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Michelle.
19,000 people. They can't be wrong, right?
Hey, I was one of those 19,000, let me tell you, with a group of friends, and no one was wrong. It was a really, really great night.
Tell me about it. Okay, just the energy of the crowd, because I keep hearing about this. I keep seeing these photos of people just so excited, signs of someone, a little girl holding up a sign with an arrow saying future PWHL player.
So many signs, so many girls and teens and women showing up in their team's hockey jerseys, in their adult league jerseys, in PWHL jerseys, in PWHL swag, in Team Canada jerseys, a lot of them for a captain jersey from Team Canada, who is Marie-Philippe Poulin, as you know. It was just a wonderful scene. People were so happy to be there. It was a great game. They put everyone up on the big screen in between play stoppages where you could see all these girls teams sitting together in the stands, and just the excitement and the happiness of having an event like this in Vancouver was just made the night so special.
Wow. What does that tell you? This was the third highest attendance in the PWHL's history so far. It's not a long one right now, but what does that tell you about the appetite for pro women's hockey in BC?
Well, it's big, and I think it's only going to get bigger as more girls and women see those images like we were just talking about from Rogers Arena, and the exposure of this game gets to grow. And, the stars are growing too, their personalities. We all know who Sarah Nurse is. We all knew who MPP is, especially in Canada with our great Olympic success.
Yes.
And it's just great to see women's hockey at the elite level. I have to say, I was a former sportscaster. I followed the game for a long time. The game is 100 times better than it was when it first got into the Olympics in 1998. Like, we have to remember that, the history of seeing women's hockey on a big stage isn't that old. And it used to be just once a year, the Olympics or the World Championships. But now with this league, there are opportunities to watch and see elite women's hockey. And so the streaming, the broadcast, however you want to think about it, the marketing that goes on, the jerseys, the names, the personalities, it's only going to make more girls want to play this game.
Okay, speaking of personalities, MPP, you down with MPP? Yeah, you know
well,
me.
People are Pooh. People they call her Pooh, or of course Captain Clutch as well. MPP is the one I've gotten used to.
You were here, right? So she actually scored 2 goals at this game, including the game winner. One on her knees, right? Like as she just fell on her knees.
She was falling. No, it is an incredible goal that just shows her skill. She is an incredible player. For Olympic Games, she's our Captain Clutch.
And if you remember the 2010 games, which you were reporting from and hosting at, tell me about that memory.
Yeah, well, and I think the women's team, unfortunately, from the 2010 games exists in the shadow of the men's team and the golden goal, again, Linda Crosby and all that. But they were a fantastic group of players, MPP led by that. And I also was at the women's final in Sochi in the games after Vancouver, where MPP was a huge piece of Canada coming back from behind to win and beat the Americans in the gold medal game. That was incredibly exciting as well. So just to have a more regular taste and a more regular view of these fantastic players like we do, because now the PWHL does exist, is you just can't put a value on what that's going to mean for the growth of the game in this country.
We're going to put out the phone lines again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Let us know, are you excited about the prospect of having the PWHL expand to Vancouver? Were you at the game? What do you think is needed to make it happen? You can call us again, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your phone or 1-800-825-5950. You can email us as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. And Chris writes, you're talking about men's hockey. Chris writes from Cranbrook, people in Vancouver love the Canucks, but the women's hockey game had higher attendance than the Canucks. I think a pro women's hockey team would be amazing. And I think the NHL and the NHL commissioner will want to get into the PWHL business. Okay, logistically speaking, what are the chances here, Karen?
Well, do you want me to respond to that email? Because,
yeah, sure.
The PWHL is a centrally owned league. So there's a single owner, the Walters, that own the league and sort of operate the league. And I think that's a good way for women's hockey to develop this professional league. Listen, it's important that the organizations running these teams are running a women's league. Michelle, like one of the things when I was sitting in the rink, I was looking at the rink board advertising. So it's diapers, it's toilet paper, it's vacuum cleaners. It's like the women's game is a different audience and a different entity, and you don't want it to be someone's little side business off in the corner. You really want an organization that supports this enterprise first and foremost, and not as a sort of add-on or afterthought. So that's what I would say about, the NHL should be, starting women's teams. Maybe it's worked in the WNBA, but those are my 2 cents on that. As for Vancouver getting an expansion team, I'm going to give everyone a little bit of a history lesson here. I've been around a long time. There was a pro women's hockey team in Vancouver in 2000. It was born out of the 1998 Olympics when women's hockey got in Nagano, and that sparked this huge interest in women's hockey. And so I believe it was Canada played the US in a just sort of a one-off game after the Olympics, and that was sold out, or it was pretty close to sold out at Rogers Arena as well. And there was this great momentum behind it in Vancouver. This pro league started up, and Vancouver had a team, the Vancouver Griffins. It was owned by West Vancouver school teacher Diane Nelson. Did a bunch of stories back in the day. Cami Granato was one of the stars on that team, but they couldn't sustain it because you got to think about traveling this many people, the number of people it takes to run a hockey team, the staff and the players, east to west to east. It's so expensive. The travel was so expensive, and the gates and the revenue just couldn't support that. And so that team folded, and the league folded after 3 years. And so this is why this PWHL, I'm sure, is looking to tread maybe a little bit carefully in expansion. And if it does come to the West, I think what would need to happen is there would need to be a West division. There would need to be enough teams out here close to fly around Seattle, Edmonton, Calgary, who knows, where they could play and not have to travel, make that long haul to the east, not have those Eastern teams all have to travel out to the West Coast all the time because it's just too expensive. Another consideration is a rink. You need to find a rink to play in as well. The average attendance at a PWHL game is about 5,000. So, Rogers Arena is too big for that. You don't want to be rattling around in a big empty or something seemingly empty. So you have to have a right-sized rink. So I think that those are all things that need to be considered. I think it will happen eventually. I think there is so much momentum and growth in the game from the grassroots level that it can support it, but it might not happen immediately.
Okay, really interesting points there about keeping the Western Division and just making it ways to make it sustainable, because you're right, there's excitement about a one-off game, but what's needed to actually make it happen and make it sustainable in the long run.
Right.
Karen Larson.
Can I just add? Yeah. Can I add one more thing that made the game really interesting and why there were 19,000 people there? It's because the Pacific Coast Hockey League, which looks over minor hockey and girls minor hockey in this area, they canceled all their games. So all those female players out there they could go to the game, and the adult leagues did the same thing. My daughter plays on a beer league team. I know they canceled all their games that day, so all the women's teams could go and be there as well. And that's that really contributed to the success of that night.
Yeah, cross that off on your calendar for sure. Chris, who emailed us, is actually now on the line because he's just so enthusiastic. Hello, Chris in Cranbrook.
Hello there. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. Okay, tell us more about why you're excited about the prospect of pro women's hockey in Vancouver.
Well, you know that I listened to Scott Regier on Kelowna's CBC Sports, okay? And he was saying that, Vancouver loves the Canucks. However, he also said that the attendance for the women's game was way higher than any of the regular games that the Canucks played. And your guest was going over about Captain Clutch and scoring the goal on her knees.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. That is what we need.
That kind of excitement and showmanship.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Chris, great to hear from you. Thank you for your email as well.
Okay.
Take care. That's Chris in Cranbrook. I'd love to hear from anyone who has a daughter who plays, or if you play yourself, what this means to you to have seen a pro women's hockey game in Vancouver. I want to get into what this means for young women who play hockey. In fact, let's listen now to a clip. Ava McGinley and Naz Mansour are two forwards with the Fraser Valley Rush U18 AAA program. They went to the game on Wednesday night, and just before that, they spoke to Gloria Makarenko on CBC's On the Coast about their excitement and what the launch of the league last year has meant to them.
I thought it was a good chance for the women to show that they can do exactly what men can do, and it's just super fun that we can have the experience of playing up there one day.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So, Naz, what has it meant for you to be able to watch the league, progress and succeed the way it has?
It means that, our dreams can come true, essentially. If it's something you want to pursue, it's a possibility now, and the women that are currently playing in the league are paving the way for us.
Paving the way for us. That's Ava McGinley and Naz Mansour. They're forwards with the Fraser Valley Rush's U18 AAA program. What do you think of that, paving the way? And this was where they were this week. You could say that the way was paved for them, many years ago as well, in 1998 and in the 2000s, Karen. But what does that mean to female hockey players to be seeing this momentum, do you think?
Right. I listened to those two young players, and it's the saying, if you can see it, you can be it. I think that's what's happening now. We're finally seeing the best players more often. Like I said before, not just once a year, but you can stream or watch every PWHL game, so you can follow the league. You can follow your heroes. You can keep in touch with the season and how it's unfolding and that whole big story. It's true, the sports landscape is really crowded, but it's really crowded with mostly men's sports. And so for, half the population, it's really great to have this sort of window opened on the other half of the sports world.
And I'll just put out the numbers again. If you know someone in your life, in your family who is a young female hockey player, let us know. I'd love to hear from you what you think this all means, and how excited are you about this possibility of a permanent pro hockey team in Vancouver, the PWHL coming here permanently. And what do you think is needed to support female hockey in BC? I guess that's the question, right? What's needed to support it in the long term? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 as well. And our email, bctoday@cbc.ca. And Karen Larson is with me, CBC News and sports broadcaster, Olympian as well. You were talking about the crowded sports, world. There is a rise in women's, let's say, pro soccer, right? The launch of the Northern Super League, the Vancouver Rise Club, and Christine Sinclair using her stature to throw her support behind it. I mean, do you see that perhaps playing a role in enabling other sports as well?
Well, Christine Sinclair, yeah, certainly doesn't hurt, does
No.
I do find it really interesting that that the Northern Super League and the PWHL is in its second year. These things are happening now. It feels like for someone like me who's sort of followed and watched various leagues and it's taken a long time in Canada to get these things sort of up and running, and it's so great. And I hope they don't end up competing against each other, because I do think the marketing will be different for a female league for female teams, and they will be directed mostly at females, parents of young players, perhaps, and you just hope that there is enough appetite in the market to support both of these leagues and endeavors. And there's no competition here in Vancouver because we don't have an NWHL team yet, and so
Right.
of course there'll be a huge appetite for the launch of the Rise. But the thing is, you want to do it in a way that's sustainable. That's going to go beyond the first year and beyond the second year. And I think that's got to be part of the calculations, obviously, of the people who are putting together the Vancouver Rise.
I've watched a lot of youth soccer, girls soccer, and it is really fun, really exciting. Robert writes, my daughter, who's 3, doesn't really have any influences in her life as I'm a single dad. We were at the game and we managed to get tickets through my work. My daughter was so excited. It was so loud with lots of people. It's amazing to see. And my daughter now wants to be a hockey player. Oh my goodness, Robert, that is exciting. Oh, what a thrill for your 3-year-old, I'm sure.
And it's exciting. It's not surprising at all to me, though, Michelle. Like, I don't know. The scene inside was so joyous and female dominant as well. And honestly, at some point I looked around and I felt like almost weeping. It was so positive and so fun, and all the jerseys and all the girls and the women, and just this just wanting to be a part of this moment. And it was only a one-off, but it was such a fantastic thing to be a part of.
What do you want audiences to think about? You talked about how marketing needs to be. This needs to be specifically a women's league. But what about audiences and fans? How can they, they make sure that they're there to support a team should it come?
Yeah, well, if I think they like the idea of women's pro soccer, or like the idea of women's pro hockey, they should go and buy tickets and buy the jerseys and the merch and all the stuff and support it in whatever way they can. I mean, that's kind of the nice thing. I think from what I understand about the PWHL, it's a different price point, lower than the NHL, but you still get to see the big stars. And the season is shorter. They play fewer games, and I sense that Toronto and Montreal were pretty excited to be in Vancouver in front of a crowd like that on Wednesday, and they played hard. It was a good game. It was exciting. The stars shone. It was thrilling right to the end, and they did a great job marketing it too. Nathan Rourke, quarterback for the BC Lions, spun the horn at the beginning, whatever that thing is. And Ryan Gauld from the Whitecaps was there, and they invited a lot of the local sports stars from the professional teams to be there as well. There's players from the women's rugby sevens team who won a silver medal at the Olympics.
Wow.
Vancouver Rise players as well. Really great job, just sort of showcasing Vancouver's professional sports scene amidst this one-off game from the PWHL, this takeover tour. And that was a great part of kudos to the people who did the, what do you call it? The game marketing, or the in-house, the in-house product. It was really, really good.
Karen, it's funny. I thought about giving you a shout to talk about this, and you sound so excited to chat about it. I mean, what does it mean for you as someone who's covered sports for so long?
I'm very happy, really happy to see women's sports taking this next step in Canada up to this level. You think about female hockey players in the past. So if you were an elite player, you would get to the AAA level, play in a national championships, maybe get called up to the national team, which is limited, and maybe get a scholarship to a U.S. college or a chance to play in a youth sport, Canadian university team as well. And then when that ended, it was just over. And there was really no place for these women to go. Now, there have been some pro leagues in the East in the previous years that have all sort of folded into the PWHL now, but it's just the highest level now of opportunity for women to play. It doesn't mean your career has to end when you're 25. It means that all that work you put into becoming an elite athlete can get you somewhere in life, can get you a salary that maybe you can live on, and you can be on a cereal box, you can do the commercials, you can be recognized the way so many professional male athletes are. And I want to say this too, like Chloe Primerano, who is has been described from British Columbia as a generational player. She's just on the rise now in women's hockey in Canada. So we had Hayley Wickenheiser, we had MPP, maybe Chloe Primerano from BC is the next one, and there's a name to watch too. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see her, well, obviously on the Olympic team, but also in the PWHL in the future.
I remember interviewing her. What a thrill that was. A couple of emails here to end. Ronald writes, there was a program on CBC Radio this week about how difficult it is for women and girls to get ice time, and that's why a lot of women are backing out of ice hockey. We need more access for women to get ice time. Ronald, thank you for that. And Patricia writes, I look forward to the day when professional women hockey players get paid at least the same as the men, or more if demand indicates. Thank you very much for that as well, Patricia. You were talking about salaries that you can live on as well. Karen, what a pleasure to speak with you. I can feel your enthusiasm through the screen here.
Yeah, my pleasure, Michelle. I'm happy to be here.
That's CBC reporter Karen Larson. Thank you so much for all of your calls and your emails this afternoon. A lot more emails coming in on wildfires as well. Much more coverage of that, of course, throughout the day and throughout the weekend here on CBC.